Tried asking Grok to make Will pregnant. I think it already assumes he is. What the actual f***? Now hang on a minute, why are there more?
That's rude.
Hey there guys, I'm Will and welcome to the Comedy Review, the show that's so entertaining I'm surprised Mohammed Ben Sulayem hasn't found a way to ruin it yet. Well shit. It's also the show where we talk about things that happen in motorsport. Things like this. Yuki Tsunoda becomes the first female F1 driver in 49 years. Sauber meanwhile empower women by sending their F1 Academy star to their kitchen. And Isaac Hadjar recounts his experience of a gangbang.
We definitely smashed them.
We've got a fair bit to cover then, and we start here. The big news of the last fortnight circulated around Alpine, like a giant f***ing tornado. Not even by the time the team were done packing up in Miami, rumours were swirling around the paddock that incumbent driver Jack Doohan was set to be replaced by Franco Colapinto for the next round in Imola. That wasn't hugely surprising news, following earlier reports that Briatore's stiffy for the Argentinian was so large it had generated its own gravitational field. What was more surprising was the announcement that champion of the receding hairlines, Ollie Oakes, would be stepping aside with immediate effect, apparently in solidarity with his rookie driver. That's awfully cute for F1. Oh, never mind, he was just illegally moving money for the Russians. That puts Flav back in charge for the first time since he was banned from the sport over the Crashgate scandal midway through 2009, and it didn't take long before he was back in the headlines once again. The Colapinto news would be made official, along with Argentinian weather reporting sunny skies with a high chance of semen rain in the afternoon. Although the excitement would be slightly cooled by the additional detail that Franco was also on a short-term contract. No, not till the end of the year, just for the next 5 races, because Alpine seemed to have the intellectual ability of a f***ing stroke victim at this point. Briatore, though, was quick to dispel the rumours, claiming he'd never heard such twaddle, despite it being clearly mentioned in Alpine's own press release. Elsewhere in the news, actually this is in the news so much, I'm just turning it into a segment at this point.
What the fuck have the FIA done this week? Oh, Mohammed, what the fuck have you done now?
Mohammed Ben Sulayem's time might just be coming to an end, as Carlos Sainz, no, the more senile-looking one, might be about to challenge Big Ben for his presidency. Most reaction was first to lessen the swearing penalties, which no one seems to care about anymore after Dan Ticktum got away with this the other week.
Because we're going to lose the whole fucking race because of that. Oh, for fuck's sake, man. Fucking hell. Fuck this shit.
So when that didn't work, next on the agenda was to just go full Putin, as Ben 10 attempted to pass a new law that let the FIA president veto competing candidates. I mean, I literally predicted this in the video a few weeks ago, only it was a Patreon exclusive, so you'll just have to head over there to see if I'm lying or not. On a serious note though, surely this can't make it through. Then again, the moment you disagree with this guy, you mysteriously find yourself without a consistent income anymore. All that appear to be left are those who desperately want to suck the warlord's cock, only they can't because you get stoned in Saudi Arabia for that. It does make you wonder though, what happens next? Maybe a military parade, or a special operation aimed at another series, or maybe it's just time to wipe out his remaining opponents with his favourite pickup line. Does this smell like nerve agent to you? Finally in the news, let's touch on Max Verstappen, or Franz Hermann, as he was known when he showed up randomly to the Nordschleife last weekend. The Dutchman did his best to remain low-key by rocking up driving a Ferrari, with Verstappen.com plastered all over the front of it. Gee, I wonder who that could be. I'm also rather disappointed in Verstappen's choice of fake name. If you had the talent to set a new lap record and have it under any name imaginable, surely you'd be going after the likes of the Testicles, or the Hugh Januses, or the Mike Oxlongs. I'm such a child. Track action would kick off in Imola then, with Pierre Gasly turning a poor old rabbit into space debris. Meanwhile, Alex Albon was clearly watching my latest video, was the trend of me talking about Williams drivers, only for them to age like, well, that said rabbit from a second ago, came true once again. Red Bull, meanwhile, come into this weekend not the most controversial team for once, and celebrating 400 Grand Prix, teasing a special historic livery, only to add a white stroke to their numbers, which actually looks quite good. Can we keep this, please? The milestone wouldn't grant them any favours, however, as Yuki Tsunoda found himself held up by Colapinto, the Argentine here clearly paying homage to Doohan with his opening pace this weekend. Ferrari Ferrari were having a fun one as well, Leclerc testing out Imola's new self-policing track limits, while #Bless discovered that you could navigate the chicane much quicker if you just drive straight over it. Their rivals McLaren came into the weekend, claiming they weren't expecting the same level of dominance present in Miami, although the final FP1 standings appear to dispel that as a massive fucking lie. Taking top honours with the conclusion of opening practice, Piastri leading Norris as a hard-charging Sainz completed the top 3. Another surprise with a pair of Saubers rounding out the top 10, Gabriel Bortoleto celebrating by taking the final corner off. Onward to FP2 then, and having taken up a part-time job in rabbit genocide in the morning, Pierre Gasly was back doing what he does best in the second session, ending it best of the rest, just behind the pair of papaya cars. This being the start of the European season meant it was a perfect opportunity for the first big upgrade packages to hit the cars, Aston Martin revealing a radical set of new parts, enough to lift Lance Stroll as high as 17th on the timing screens. Meanwhile, Isaac Hadjar gave his new floor the complete 360 as his V-carb hurtled towards the barriers. It was a mixed bag for Mercedes, Russell high up the order in 4th, whilst home hero Antonelli used the second hour to try out the Hamilton line at the chicane, which clearly didn't work as he finished down in 18th. Colapinto was another to struggle in his Alpine, instead taking the time to be a menace towards the other drivers out on track. This was copied by Yuki Tsunoda, enough to piss off the Argentinian fans for some reason, to the point where they said he smells and looks like a Pokemon. Don't worry Yuki, they're just pissed off because these are still ours. Honestly, we just nuke Argentina and be done with it at this point. We could easily use any of the RGs for our ex-Bell end of the week, but this wouldn't be a comedy review without slacking off McLaren fans, would it? And with a week off, they've managed to take their shithousery to new heights. It started with these universal grade bell ends going as far as to email Zach Brown, calling out his treatment of Lando Norris, because naturally it's McLaren's fault that Britain has a fetish for P4 at the moment. Also, I love this one, are we really at the stage where a DTS fan can call themselves a quote, long-term supporter of the team? In that case, I've been a long-term supporter of starting a school for Lando Norris fans and letting some American incels use it for target practice. Now, if you think that can't get any worse, well, turns out it can. Bro, I used to work for McLaren in the Indianapolis division. I used to help them with some of the F1 stuff before I quit a couple of months back. But it's a very small group of people that work there, including Zach. And I literally told Zach, if they choose to support Oscar only, I quit. And guess what happened? I ended up quitting 2 weekends later after Bahrain, because I know Zach was showing blatant favoritism towards Oscar, and these aren't normal coincidences. Those parts on the car that were loose in qualifying have to have been manually loosened. Manually. You might think the same must apply to the screws in your brain, only they were loosened manually when you were dropped on your head as a child. Anyway, while the Quadrant fans cry into their wank rags, here were some of my favourite replies. You've never worked on anything mechanical in your life, have you? I'm sure he's devastated you're gone. You should be bullied off the internet for even considering posting something this stupid. Big thanks to Luke here for pointing this one out, and if you'd like to nominate our next X-Bell end of the week, use the hashtag on screen, tag me on the platform, or join our Discord server. Now, let's move on to Saturday. Oh look, a challenge. Qualifying day, meaning it was time for McLaren to play Bottle Simulator, both cars checking out the gravel as their rivals began to turn up the heat. Verstappen P3 and Ferrari flying as well, only literally in their case. Isaac Hadjar was a surprise P7 for Racing Bulls, Liam Lawson aiming to emulate his French teammate, but accidentally choosing to look at his FP2 data instead. Despite their escapades, it was still McLaren on top however, Lando Norris this time taking the spoils as the grid geared up for qualifying later that afternoon. Other than that, it was a pretty boring session, so tell you what, I set up an anonymous confessions channel in my Discord last night, so I wonder how that's getting on. Actually, I think we'll leave this to the podcast channel. With all the drama thus far then, qualifying was going to throw up a challenge, or in Yuki Tsunoda's case, throw him up into the sky instead. The Japanese driver was on his first lap of Q1 when he decided he didn't fancy doing qualifying things anymore, and thought instead he would use this moment as the perfect time to try and recreate the Mercedes Le Mans disaster of 1955. Now just play the f***ing meme already. With one spot in the drop zone booked up already, that was at least good news for teams like Haas or Sauber, only they were still playing in the sand pit for some reason. Franco Colapinto would just make it through, not bad for your first weekend back. And look, I know this guy's been called a born-again Senna, though I'm not quite sure you need to go as far as stacking it at Tamburello. Alright, now I'm using the red flag meme to go into hiding. Colapinto shunt impacted the number of drivers further back, giving Lawson his excuse for being knocked out of Q1 and also screwing over Mehrman, who had said a lap time good enough for 10th, though saw it deleted after this apparently came after the red flag. No, we did that already. That led to the f***est Mexican standoff you'll ever see at the start of Q2, as Behrman remained sat in the car while the man he originally displaced, Gabriel Bortoleto, trundled down the pit lane and prepared to go out on circuit. With Sauber now having the advantage of employing ex-Red Bull crybaby Jonathan Wheatley, Behrman was told to go f*** himself, and that was that, meaning we could focus on that second session and watch Ferrari somehow get worse. For a team that had suffered from braking problems all weekend, they found a new way to grind to a halt by finishing P1 and 2 as the checkered flag fell. Well, P1 and 2 if you ignore the additional ones in front of them. As Leclerc went off searching for a new prancing horse that would preferably kick him in the back of the head, Ferrari's ex was loving life in his Williams, Sainz stopping the session, which could have garnered more attention if both Aston Martins hadn't somehow made it into the top 10 shootout as well. With the script out the window then, who would take pole? Well, Verstappen would draw first blood in Q3 before Piastri would blow that time out the water in the dying moments of the session. Next over the line would be Lando Norris, and he'd done his typical 2025 thing of f***ing it up, ending up behind his teammates, and behind Verstappen, and behind Russell as well. It's been a long time coming, but hello bottle number 15 of the year. Max would come close, but would just miss out on taking the top spot, leaving McLaren with at least something to cheer about, and a very interesting Grand Prix set up for Sunday. So if you're enjoying the video, hit that like button, get subscribed, have another wank if you're that guy from the Confessions channel, and bring it on. We were promised rain for race day, so imagine my disappointment to turn on my TV to see nothing but sunshine and Jack f***ing Villeneuve on my screen. You see, Imola is one of those circuits we describe as iconic, which means it has loads of history, but combined with the modern day boats, it's about as good as racing as Diddy would be as a primary school teacher. Max Verstappen wasn't listening to those claims, however, and despite having arguably the worst of the two starts on the front row, tucked into Piastri's slipstream and sent one round the outside of Tamburello corner. That move had me out of my seat, and I may have even tinkled a little. Things were going slightly less well for new boy Franco Colapinto, who forgot to press the accelerator out of the hairpin and dropped several positions back on lap 1. And if you're wondering why there's no footage of this, well, it mysteriously was absent from the highlights, which I assume is the editor choosing life. Pierre Gasly wouldn't get the same treatment, falling out of the top 10 when he thought he spotted another rabbit in the gravel. With Verstappen storming away out front then, Lando Norris was doing his best to get onto the podium. That involved having to pass George Russell, and despite attempting his Japan strategy of driving over the grass, the Briton eventually found enough brain cells to get the move done on lap 11, in what was a cracking overtake, I've got to say. I don't British bias me for that, for f***'s sake. Both Papaya cars were now in the top 3, but the lead still remained in the hands of Red Bull. McLaren decided to attempt an undercut in order to get by, although this rather went out the window when Piastri's front right felt it could do the second stint as well and refused to come off the car. Not the worst incident in the pits, Fernando Alonso would repurpose his Aston Martin into a f***ing flamethrower. That was still more useful than Esteban Ocon's Haas, which ground to a halt and brought out the virtual safety car a handful of laps later. Since Verstappen was still yet to change off his starting tyres, that gifted the Dutchman a free pit stop and ruined any strategy intrigue in the battle for the lead. It did shake things up a little bit further back. Albon now sat in the top 3, Hadjar in the top 5, and Stroll 10th. 10th! The tyre offset was allowing drivers like #Blessed to look like he was quick again, the Ferrari man quickly dispatching Antonelli and soon after making it into the top 5. Williams meanwhile was still hoping to cling on to a podium before Piastri said "F*** your podium" and moved back up into 3rd. Unfortunately though, that looked to be it in this one. Verstappen 18 seconds up the road and this looking like 2023 again, until Antonelli's engine decided it was done for the day on lap 46, causing the Italian to pull over at the same place as Ocon, but bring out the full safety car this time because I assume the stewards were getting as bored as the rest of us. This was bad news for the Ferrari pit wall. They had to do some thinking again, and said thinking resulted in them leaving Leclerc out as they didn't think they had the tyre that could go the 10 laps needed to get to the flag. With gunshots ringing out all across Italy then, McLaren would find themselves in a similar predicament. Oscar Piastri led Norris, though unlike his teammate had stayed out. That meant Lando was actually in the better position to challenge Verstappen out front, so the issue was, this was also Lando Norris. With Team Papaya unable to solve this conundrum, the track would go back to green and Verstappen would return to driving off into the distance. Norris was able to make the Piastri move on his own a few laps later, but it was far too late by that stage. That left our attention a little further back on Alex Albon, who still had a chance at 4th, with Leclerc struggling on worn hard tyres. That gave us some hard racing into turn 1, which as we know isn't allowed in 2025, forcing the Monegasque to hand the position back and start crying over the team radio. There was none of that on Max Verstappen's end, however, the Dutchman cruising to a 2nd win this season, and in doing so continuing to make this 2025 championship very interesting indeed. Other shout-outs had to go to Yuki Tsunoda, who went from the pit lane to 10th by the flag, Alex Albon for his stunning P5 run, and to me for making a Williams video that aged well for once. Lewis Hamilton had one of his better races as well, it has to be said, though paid for it with his chance of any future children. Despite the fight for the win being, well, pretty non-existent as it turned out. We got a lot of action throughout this one, and some great overtaking around a circuit that supposedly you aren't allowed to overtake at. One of the best races of the year so far, and so I'm slapping it with an 8 out of 10. Let me know your ratings down in the comments below. Busy weekend next week as F1 heads to Monaco, and across the pond we have the Indy 500, which has already thrown up some chaos in qualifying. Long story short, I'm going to want to kill myself after covering all of that, so if you want to make me feel a little bit better, you can get subscribed to the channel, drop it a like, and check out the new episode of my podcast Talk Shift as well. Big ups to the members and patrons. I'm still aiming to bring them some exclusive videos in the next few days. Thanks for bearing with me on that one, but you won't want to miss them when they eventually release. All relevant links are down in the description below, and that's about all from me. So, until next time, f**k off.